Okay, let's get this show on the road. Good morning, everybody. My name is Adrian Duckenfield, pre-sales engineer for UK and Ireland. And today we're going to be talking about HTTPS deep packet inspection. More importantly, I'm going to be showing you how to configure it. So, when we talk about DPI, most people get a bit worried. You know, it sounds big, it sounds scary. People are worried about how to configure it. It's actually pretty straightforward to configure, if I'm honest. We made some changes in 11.9.4, which made it much easier for you guys to actually roll this out properly. We are actually going to be adding more changes as well in the future to make it even easier, which is always good. Before I get going, I've just created what can only be described as an awful Visio diagram. So let me just show you this. This is going to give you an idea of how DPI works. So without DPI, we have this tunnel here. Now what you do is you'll create a secure HTTPS tunnel, encrypted tunnel from your browser of your machine directly to the website on the internet. Now, although you're passing through the firewall, although you're passing through different hops on the internet, different ISPs and routers, nothing between your browser and that web server can see what's happening inside that tunnel. Now, for security, that's brilliant because that means people can't hack you and steal your data and that kind of thing. But in regards to actually applying policies to what your users are doing, that's not so good. I can't block you posting on Facebook if I can't actually see you do that. With DPI enabled, however, we can then actually see what's happening. Now let me explain how this works. So without the DPI, we've got that one single tunnel. With DPI, we have two. So we create a tunnel from the browser's machine to the firewall, and again, that information there is encrypted. We then decrypt the traffic back to HTTP, where we can then apply our HTTP proxy rules, so your web filtering, your application control, antivirus scanning, and everything else. We then create another tunnel, and that tunnel then goes from the firewall to the web server. So as it leaves your perimeter, the traffic is still encrypted, so everything else across the internet can't see what's going on, which is secure. Now, the problem arises when you browse to the website. Let's say this website up here is Google. I go to Google, Google issue me with a HTTPS certificate, and that gets published all the way back down into my browser. And that tells my machine that the IP address I've gone to is certified and is correct. It is Google. The problem with DPI is that certificate terminates at the end of the tunnel. And this tunnel in particular goes from the website to the firewall. So that Google certificate terminates there. The tunnel we then create from the firewall to the user is our own tunnel. It's a new tunnel. It's got nothing to do with Google. Therefore, when you browse to the Google website, for example, you'll get a certificate warning error saying, well, hang on a minute, that IP address isn't Google, where in fact the IP address is actually your firewall. So with that in mind, what we do is we take a copy of the certificate off the firewall, and then we publish that to all your users. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. Right, let's come out of this lovely Visio. Okay, first things first, let's look at how we actually configure the firewall for deep packet inspection. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go and create myself a HTTPS proxy, like so. Now, although I have the ability to turn on app control down here, most of these apps aren't going to be identified if I don't have DPI turned on. So remember that, it's very, very important. If you want accurate application control, accurate AV scanning, accurate WebBlocker, you've got to be able to see what's happening, so you have to have DPI turned on. So let's go and edit our proxy actions. Okay, the first thing you do is you turn on the engine. There we go. So by ticking that box, we have now enabled deep packet inspection. But all we've done is turn on the engine. We haven't actually configured anything else yet. At this point, I'm going to select my proxy action. Now you'll note here that this is the HTTP proxy action. So what you would want to do is select the same HTTP proxy action you're using on your HTTP rule. Because on my HTTP rule, I've already configured what to AV scan, what web blocker to use, this, that, and the other. So what I'm going to do here is by selecting the relevant HTTP template, when we get decrypted back to HTTP, it applies the same policy as if it was my HTTP rule. And that means, of course, if you need to make any changes to your HTTP rule, it affects both HTTP and HTTPS. So you only ever need to manage the one rule. Nice and easy. So I'm going to select this one. Now, prior to 11.9.4, we had this down here. And you can still use this, but to be honest, I'm surprised they left it in. You don't need this bit anymore. This is a way of bypassing DPI. So this is how we did it before. And you could come in here and do a lookup. And I could do hsbc.co.uk, for example. It brings up the IP addresses for that website, and I bypass them. Now, when we bypass them, we are basically treating that traffic as a HTTPS packet filter. So one packet at a time will just be routed straight out with no inspection done at all. And I mean at all. Nothing will be done. No AV, nothing. So you do use that with caution. Now, as I said, you don't really need to do it this way anymore because we've made some pretty significant improvements with the HTTPS inspection. So I'm just going to get rid of that. Let's kick these ones out. Okay. So we've turned on the DPI. The next thing we do, we go down to domain names. Now, you need to say, if not matched, inspect. And what that basically means is, if there's nothing in this list up here, I want you to do DPI on everything. So you do that like so. Now, every single website I go to will have DPI enabled for it. Now, you may be aware that certain websites do not like this form of inspection. Google is a bit of a pain for it, as is the iTunes Store with Apple. I don't think that works. YouTube, you can't do it either. So it's a bit of a pain, especially now we've brought out this HSTS policy, which people can sign up to, which basically means you can't do this form of inspection. So for the websites that you either don't want to inspect or cannot be inspected, we've made it very, very easy for you to bypass those. For example, everything.apple.com add. And then now we're saying if it's in this list, it will be allowed, which means do not do inspection. If it's not in the list, we'll inspect it. Now, because I've added an exception, I'm probably going to tell that to log. So if I do still see any kind of issues with this website, I can go to my traffic monitor logs and say, well, actually, I can see it is hitting the exception, so I know it's not that at fault. So I'd still recommend you log the exception anyway. So that's made it really easy just to bypass things by domain name. Then the WebBlocker section. In here, you want to go ahead and select the same WebBlocker template you're using for your HTTP and HTTPS proxy rule. So I'm just going to say it's the home one here, for example. So here is my 130 categories from the WebBlocker database. Now, previously what we've done is we've said, okay, no problem, tick this, 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 and this, and we'll block those categories. But now what we're doing is we're saying, which categories do you want to apply the inspection to? Select all. There we go. So now every single WebBlocker category will have DPI applied to it. And if I don't want to do deep packet inspection on internet, TV, and radio, I just simply untick it. So we give you that granularity of which, what domain names you can apply the inspection to and which web categories you apply that to as well. Now, as far as you go for rules, that's pretty much as difficult as it gets. It's really straightforward. So we've made some pretty interesting changes there to make it easier for you guys. Right, bear with me uno momento. Okay, I've got a couple of questions arised already. Usually I pick these up at the end, but I'm just going to go through these quickly now. Just give me a second. I'm not playing around DPI. To import a list of problem domains. Okay, so the first question is basically saying, And it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the presentation, where people have some pretty big concerns about the DPI and the issues it can raise. And is there an easy way of importing a list of domains, hosts, or URLs that don't work with DPI? There is the answer to that one. So what I would actually recommend you guys do in the latest version, which has just come out, we have, which is now 11.10, you can do fully qualified domain names in rules. So what I would advise you do is you just create a HTTPS packet filter, and in the to field of the rule, you put the domain name. So that may be an easier way of adding multiples in there at the same time. Alternatively, you can actually put it in the HTTPS proxy rule yourself, but it's not going to be, I don't think there's a way of actually importing. Let's have a look. Let's turn this back on. Yeah, I mean the add is one at a time down here, and the domain names are as well. So, oh, actually, wait a second. If I change the view, yes, there we go. Import. Create an XML file. Import your XML file. There's all of your HTTPS exceptions. Look at that. Cool, blimey, I've opened a can of worms now. I've got loads of questions. Best practice with Office 365. Okay, Office 365 is not a website you would typically browse to, or as in, you don't necessarily care about that traffic. You don't need to do DPI on that, so there's no need to. So again, I'd put that in as an exception. The stuff that we want DPI applied to is stuff that you want to see your users browsing to. So again, I want to see them on Facebook. I want to see how much iPlayer, YouTube, Auto Trader, this, that, and the other. Office 365 is a business application, so all of your business applications, including things like, you know, AV signature updates, your own website, that kind of stuff, you're going to want to put those ones in the DPI exceptions. Not only because you don't necessarily care too much about those because they're business apps, but also to free up resources on the firewall. So be under no illusion, guys, turning on DPI does have a performance impact on the firewall, but, and it's a big one, a big but, our boxes are designed with DPI in mind. For example, the new M series we bought out is 149% faster at DPI than its predecessor. So our boxes are designed to do this, so don't worry too much. But that said, again, there's no point wasting resources. You might as well bypass websites you don't particularly care about. So certainly Office 365, you'd want to bypass that one. Okay, these questions are piling in. Guys, I'm going to come back to the questions. I may even answer these offline because we'll be here for hours otherwise. So if I get time at the end, I'll take a look. Otherwise, I'll reply to you all individually afterwards. Okay, right, so let me quickly recap because we've digressed. I've enabled DPI. I've selected my relevant HTTP proxy action. I've gone to domain names. I've said inspect everything. But I know this website, I'm making this one up. I know this website doesn't work, so I'm going to bypass that one and I'm going to log it. WebBlocker. It's the same WebBlocker template that is in my HTTP proxy rule. Select everything, but I don't care about this one, this one, this one, and this one, so don't do DPI on those ones. There we go. So there's my HTTPS proxy rule configured. Now, at the beginning of this, I mentioned certificates and, you know, how that kind of works. So what we do is you want to go log onto your box. You want to go to your Firebox System Manager. Give that a second to load. Oh, look at this, by the way. I got an M440. Look how many interfaces I've got. Isn't that crazy? It's redonkulous. Anyway, top left corner, you have the Show Appliance Certificates. Now, if you dial into here, this is an app which can show you all of the certificates that are installed on your firewall. The only one you care about is this one here, the Proxy Authority certificate. This is the one that is used for the deep packet inspection. If you have your own certificates, you can import it in here and you can use that with the deep packet inspection, but we do provide one in here. There is no reason to not want to use this one. to be honest, because this is, remember, this certificate is only ever issued inside your network. It's never published externally. This is the certificate that's used from the firewall to your browser. So this self-signed cert is fine for internal use. So what you would do is you would export this, save it somewhere, and you would use Active Directory if that's what you're using. Most people do, to push the certificate out to your domain controlled machines. Now you'd want to push it out to the computer account on those machines using group policy, and it's going to be the trusted root certificate authority folder that you need to push it out to. So that basically means no matter what HTTPS website I go to, doesn't matter which one, I always get the same WatchGuard HTTPS certificate published to my browser. And because I trust it, I don't see any certificate warning errors. So remember, the public certificate from the website terminates at that other tunnel, at the other end of the firewall. So we never see that. It will only ever be this one here. And that, in a nutshell, is how you do the deep packet inspection. So it's not actually that big and scary. It's pretty easy to configure. It does take a bit of fine-tuning. As I say, you will stumble across websites that sometimes don't work. I know Microsoft Updates is one of them. I think we have actually sorted that from 11.8 onwards, but we still have it in the exceptions anyway, because that kind of thing sometimes could be problematic. Okay, guys, I hope you found that useful. I do have a whole bunch of questions. I will answer them, but I think I'm going to take them offline because there's too many. There's loads, actually. So I'm going to pick them up offline, and I will come back to you afterwards. Excellent stuff. So tune in next week. Next week, we're going to be looking at how to configure the AV scanning and the advanced persistent threat scanner. So if you don't know what the APTs are, that's things, looking for things like your crypto locker and stuff like that. So it's a new module that we introduced a few months ago. And I'm going to show you how to best configure your firewall to prevent that kind of stuff from coming through. So again, tune in this time next week, and we'll talk again soon. All right, guys, have a good day, and I'll speak to you soon.